Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my name is Diptii Shah and welcome to my show, Artistry. Today I have with me Ms. Vanessa Misso Vaness, who is the founder of Cascade. Hello, Vannessa, and welcome to my show.
Hi, Diptii. Good to be here. Really good to see you online.
Same here, Vannessa. So, Vannessa, what does Cascade mean to you?
Well, that's a good question. It is like my baby, you know. I started it out because I had a vision of what teaching English language would be like to children whose first language is not English. So it is a place where I've brought my experience. I've brought what I believe would be the best way of teaching them through research and pedagogy. And so it is a platform, which is me, whether it's online or face-to-face, in which I will like to manage students' learning, coach the parents about how to work with their children, and make learning of the English language not something that is difficult, but it's fun and enjoyable and meaningful, you know?
So, when did your own, teaching journey begin? How and when did you start teaching?
Yeah, my journey started more than 20 years ago. I remember when I was a teenager, wanting to make and earn some allowance for myself, I actually signed up to support some young students in Singapore learn English. I used to go out and do that. Then after graduating from university, I decided that, I did some jobs, but I decided that I wanted to go to teachers college. And so I did. So I trained as a phys ed teacher. I majored in geography and I started teaching. But somehow along the way, I felt disillusioned with where I was at, what I was doing. And I needed to, take, I suppose, say the road less traveled by most people was leave a secure job and go out and kind of cliched, find myself. And that's when I realized that I'm actually an extroverted, I'm more of a sensing, feeling kind of person. I like to be out there looking at people, feeling what they need and delivering it to them. So that journey started more than 20 years ago and it has brought me here today.
Right. Quite a long journey, I would say.
Yes, it has been. But not one froth with, it wasn't always smooth sailing. But I must say each time that I experienced difficulties, I made it a learning journey for myself too. That's how I feel I got better. And if I were to coach children, work with parents, I think bringing the experience of when you have difficulties and hardship, you can always overcome them, right? And so that's what I want to be perceived as and come across as, that nothing's too difficult if we actually either work with somebody, and if not, we work alone. There are ways to overcome our challenges.
So, Vannessa, you are the learning coach. Who all do you coach?
Right. So my learning coaching journey started a few years ago when I wanted to improve what I was doing in the classroom. I just didn't want to go in and deliver a lesson. So I started taking up courses and thinking, what is coaching? Who shall I coach? Who shall I work with? And I realized that the people that was right in front of me, the student parents, teachers that I work with, all needed coaching in how to approach teaching children in a more brain targeted manner. That means in a way that will help with the learning, make it stick. So today my coaching I coach parents how to work with children, and I also do what we call teacher mentor coaching. I work with teachers as well. If they're in the classroom with non-native speakers, I look at, what are your difficulties? Why are you experiencing this? How can we overcome it through our coaching? And this coaching is not like the coaching we know as executive coaching, where we sit down and ask you questions and you pull through. This sort of teacher mentor coaching is more of a hands-on. Bring out your teaching material. Show me your classroom. Let's see how you are actually teaching. What are the words you're using? It's really more in-depth and more intimate in this coaching.
So even when you coach students, younger children, you teach quite differently from, say, a vanilla teacher.
I would love to think that, Diptii. I would love to, because through my coaching journey, I've picked up the skills of coaching. I've also gone into neuroscience and neuroeducation. I really love about what we've been learning about the brain so much in the past decade or so. And so when I go in and I start teaching or tutoring, whatever you may call it, I believe that I bring in this very special or unique brand of teaching. I understand my students, so I want to approach the teaching in a more personalized way, but a more meaningful way, because I have different students, they all learn differently. And when we are learning, I'm not only teaching them the language, I'm teaching them the skills of how to learn, right? And how to apply what they know. And I hope, and I always hope that the skills I give them, they can apply across all their subjects, because it's a skill about analysis, about memory, about building confidence and belief in themselves when they are learning. So yes, not vanilla. I love vanilla, but I want to spice it up with a little bit more modern, contemporary research that we have.
That sounds fantastic. And I think it is very much required, right? Rather than rote learning and completing subjects, just to give exams. I mean, this is not going to help in the future and even now.
Definitely, definitely. Knowledge is out there now with the internet. You can just type in anything and you'll find the facts. But it's not that anymore. It's, I have this facts. I have fact A, fact B. What do I do? How do I use it? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for somebody else? How do I remember it? So all these questions really are what I want students that I work with to be asking themselves, and then to be able to answer it.
English as a second language or a third language or a non-native language can be quite daunting, especially if you've not, heard the language while you were growing up, because I think even listening helps.
Yeah.
What are your top 3 tips for a non-native English learner?
I'm sure you've heard this many times, but reading is the key. Reading is the key to any language that you want. Don't just read, but read widely. Pick up a magazine, pick up a newspaper, pick up a genre of book that you won't usually pick up. You think, oh, I don't like that story. Just pick it up, have a look. You'll never know. But what is the beauty of reading is that you'll pick up words that you may not have experienced or come across before, or the way that writers express a certain thought. I mean, for me, I create a little notebook. When I come across a book and I see the words and I think, that's so beautifully put, I transfer it. I want to learn it. I want to think about, because it's teaching me a different way to see the world sometimes. So reading is definitely, definitely good. Now, the second thing I advise all learners of language is use the language, all right? So many a times we sound perfect in our heads. I always tell my students this. When you have a presentation, you think in my head, oh, all the words. I said, you sound perfect in your head. But the minute you have to open your mouth and speak, just like this, it's spontaneous, isn't it?
Yes.
So the ideas have to flow. And many things are flowing this time. I'm thinking about my voice. I'm thinking about what's the next word. I'm thinking about how my body is moving, what my face looks like. So practice it. Practice it with a non-native speaker. Practice it with a native speaker. Practice it with a group. Join a club where most of the time people are speaking in English, because the more we practice, the more that somebody can tell us, oh no, maybe this is not the right way to pronounce it. That's a better word. And you learn. And you learn the language. And the third thing, I know you asked me for 3 things. And the third thing I think that's really important when it comes to language learning is to know your why. Why am I learning that language? What do I want to achieve out of that language? So from my experience, I've had people who wanted to improve their language for work, for example. So they knew business English was the target. So you work on that. People who want to work towards an exam prep. So once you know your why, your journey becomes more meaningful.
Sure.
And those are my 3 tips. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Vanessa, today's ages of online learning, even when face-to-face classes come back again in full swing, some part of us will always remember the online learning, right? Now, how have the students adapted, and what are your tips to get better at this?
Oh my goodness, I think the students adapted way better than all the teachers who had to quickly go online to adapt. They were in their element, you know? They knew about the laptop or the iPad. They were comfortable in touching buttons and adjusting things. And I think what we can first learn from students like that is try. Because that's what educators are. We always tell them to take risks. I think some educators are too frightened to take risk, right? So the children, I feel, did not have problems adjusting to the technical side of things. But the other thing that was where teachers came in is managing it, managing the students, teaching them the decorum of being online. You know, what's the etiquette? How do you sit in a lesson? Do you munch away and eat? Do you put your legs up? Are you dressed for your online lesson? Are you looking at another tab, for example? So I think that was the students' learning journey. Their learning curve was steep in that sense, and the teacher's learning curve was technical, you know, and how to transfer a face-to-face lesson, but physical lesson, to something online where you've got 20 people on the screen or 30, you're trying to engage them. That was tricky. And it still is in a big lesson, right? So I think we're all going to walk away thinking, all right, we kind of managed moving it online, bringing in games, quizzes that was meaningful and engaging. But I think what we can do to make it better is, I think this has been said before when we all went online in the beginning, having a space in which we can work in, whether it is a big space or a small space, it's still my space. I've got my stationery, I've got my laptop, I've got my paper. Once we create this space, we prepare our brains thinking, this is my learning spot. Whether I'm learning or working, this is my area. That's really important, right? Again, technically moving forward, better Wi-Fi, make sure your Wi-Fi is good. I love using earphones or headphones because I feel this makes me focus on the speaker or focus on the students, you know, and I'm not distracted by outside sounds. So how are we ever going to manage less distractions in our life? That is the key for all of us, isn't it? Adults and children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Adaptation is the key, right?
Yes.
On a lighter note, Vanessa, what are your top 3 tips for success in any area of life?
Wow, I am such a planner. I love planning. I have lists, I have notebooks. I feel that putting something down for me in words makes it real, right? In my mind, just like when I teach students about presenting, in your mind, things are airy-fairy, sound good, sound perfect. The minute you put it down or the minute you say it out, you make it concrete. You give yourself accountability for having written that down and saying. So that's important, I feel, the accountability to yourself, to your own goal, right? The second thing I've learned through the pandemic and being an entrepreneur is a business network is so, so important. You know, just think of an acrobat on a high fly walking the high wire, right? They need a net below. And having a network in which you can depend on is your safety net. Because you may have a question about the law, you may have a question about the text, you may have a question about a simple question like, do you think this Instagram post looks good and will bring in clicks? All these, if you have a network of people who are entrepreneurs themselves, that will build up your confidence and you listen to people's experiences. I love that. That network has been so good and really wonderful to me. The third thing for business for me is I truly am a big believer of continual professional development. I give myself something to do every year, one thing for myself professionally. I think that helps me grow as an individual, helps me think like an educator. What's more, what's new? What's out there that I can use to make it better for my students? And maybe it's not about a skill set that I have. Maybe it's about a skill set I don't have. You know, I had to learn about managing finances. So I attended talks about how I can manage my finance. I attended talks about how I can manage social media. So those sorts of things, I believe, will help me grow strength to strength.
Fantastic. Your networking skills are beyond doubt. You are super awesome, and everyone knows you in Hong Kong.
I like to think so.
So, Vanessa, where can people find you and follow you?
Oh, great. Do you know what? I've just updated my website. I took this year as a chance to bring something for myself as an entrepreneur. So I'm on Facebook. I have my own website. I'm on Instagram, and we are now building up that Instagram. So if you go to my website as well, you find a link to connect with me. And
Right.
from there, we can always go on WhatsApp.
Sure. I will link down all your contacts in the
Thank
description
you.
box. Thank you so much for taking time out and talking to me and giving such wonderful tips for the kids and everyone.
Oh, I love this time with you. It's always great to talk to you, and it's always great to share because you produce such great podcasts that we can all listen and learn from other entrepreneurs. Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for coming. My pleasure.